This is a topic that I do not think a lot of us even consider or understand the potential of money that can be made. So I'm really pumped for this episode, and the only reason why there's two actual realizations and things that I've done myself to benefit from the topic of today's episode, which is course marketing. Number one, we actually built something called the Client Boost Academy, where we basically made sure that everybody internally could always be learning off the same track. And so our salespeople, our account managers, our designers, everybody knew what everybody was doing. There was consistency and fluidity. We decided to package it in a way that was really well done and then launch it to the outside world. And we did it with one email, and we sold $100,000 worth of access in about a month's time. So there's a drip coming through as well too. In addition to that, one of my really good friends, Ross Hudgens from Siege Media, they're a content agency that is located in San Diego, Austin, and New York. Him and I got together. We started the community called Growth Comet, which is basically built for agency owners. We were tired of seeing everybody else out there kind of, trying to sell people on their course, but they haven't really built an agency or they haven't really done anything to warrant their experience. And so we're like, well, let's just do this. And we launched it. We had actually timelined out the full 12 months of content because we wanted to be a monthly, recurring revenue source for us. And so anybody that signed up would pay a monthly fee, and they would also get access to Slack, which is where our community, where we ask a lot of questions back and forth. And so we had written out the entire 12 months of the content, but we only created the first 3. And so we wanted to see an MVP, like a minimum viable product, throw it in the water, see if it actually would float or if it would sink. And we immediately started making about $20,000 a month off of this. It works. So if you have thought leadership, if you have brand, if you have leverage, it's a really, really good consideration to do. And so on this episode, I interviewed 3 people that I respect a ton, that I've seen from the outside do really well. One is Len Marketing. He's a CMO at Podia. Podia.com is a platform for course marketing. Love their branding. Go check them out, Podia. The other one is Alexa Hubley. She's the head of marketing at CXL, which is, if you guys are familiar with Pep Laha over at, used to be called Conversion XL. They now rebranded to CXL. So they have something called the CXL Institute. Whole different aspect of online learning for themselves and how they do it. And then the last person also on this show is Matt Cooper, who is a CEO of Skillshare, one of the really, really popular platforms when it comes to course marketing. So we're going to talk about how to build your own course, but also, of course, how to market it. And in addition, again, your end goal of why you're in business is, one, obviously it's great that you're following your passion if you are, but I think one of the main reasons a lot of us are in business is we got to make money. And so this is another way to leverage. So excited for this episode, excited for you guys to be here to learn some new things. As always, this episode and this entire podcast is sponsored by Client Boost, which is our pay-per-click, paid social, and conversion rate optimization agency. We have about 200 plus clients. We're over 60 people on the team. I know I'm biased, but we kick a decent amount of butt as well. And in addition to this, it's also sponsored by Kite. If you go to meetkite.com, that is our pay-per-click software that is also standalone too. So excited for you guys to be here. Excited for you guys to continue the journey of what we're doing. Thank you.
Ever wonder why some companies grow faster than others? What are they doing differently? And what are their secret ingredients? That's what this podcast is all about. Welcome to Boost Sauce.
All right, Alexa, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. I'm super pumped to be here.
Yeah, for the listeners, we just chatted before we started recording, and apparently we've seen each other, but we've actually never met in person. So we've been at the same conferences and stuff like that. But you are the head of marketing at Conversion XL. And really, really pumped to hear you talk about course marketing from your experience of the CXL Institute, which I have helped you guys. Well, I guess I'm a small part of it. I'm on the Google Ads portion of it. So how did you guys get started when it came to marketing your actual, institute?
Very good question. So it started long before I joined. I joined CXL just as an FYI. In January of this year, so I'm still a noob, but it all kind of started with Pep, basically. He's sort of the brains behind CXL Institute, And essentially, when it came to marketing the courses, when he started the institute, like it came out of his head that this was something like a need in the market that we honestly like.
Yeah.
When it comes to marketing, it's really hard to keep up with all of the different trends and everything you need to stay on top of. And I mean, you probably noticed this too. There's always, when you start learning one tool, you find out that you need to learn like 10 more just so you can actually make a difference. So that was like the beginning of where CXL Institute came from. When it came to marketing it, it really was just sort of built around PEP as a brand, because prior to the Institute, which is only 2 years old, prior to that, he had really done a good job of building up the brand of Conversion XL as this like CRO agency, thought leaders in CRO and conversion optimization. And essentially he was like speaking at conferences. He had like a huge following online. And from there, we just sort of like, milked his brand to kick off the Institute. We leveraged a lot of partnerships to get our word out there. And frankly, if you look at all of the instructors online and who teach our courses, they're a big part of our success because we choose instructors and people who are like well-known practitioners in their space. We choose them to teach our courses.
Yeah.
And frankly, having them who are also influencers promote and share our content is sort of like a win-win for us. We get the best of the best to teach the content, and then they also share it with their audience. So it's kind of it's my job easy, I guess.
That's true. No, it is actually funny. So you indirectly just gave us a nugget, because one thing that I've been thinking in the back of my mind that you kind of echoed on is that PEP already had an audience. PEP already had a following. And for you guys listening, Pep Laha, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Pep Laya.
I'm
probably not pronouncing it right.
Well, at least I didn't butcher his first name.
His name right.
At least.
So I have done that before.
Everybody
has.
Everybody has. No, but one thing that I think is so important, it's the same thing. So myself and a guy named Ross Hudgens at Siege Media, they're an SEO content agency. We launched a course called Growth Comet, and we did not think that it would be wise to have launched that like 3 years earlier, because now we're at the point where we're getting inquiries of like, hey, how did you guys do this? How do you guys get to this size? How do you do that? And instead of doing like consultation one by one, we're like, well, we feel like we have the thought leadership and the credibility right now to be able to do this. So for people listening, one thing I want to make sure is that if you have some kind of obscure thing in regards to what you can teach other people about and nobody else is out there on it, well, for sure, like you should go and probably be putting your course together. But if it's crowded already, people aren't dumb. They're going to look at the ones who have like the accolades, the respect already and things like that too. And it honestly makes it so much easier once you've already built something. Like PEP has already built something, which is why, in my opinion, CXL Institute is such a success. So anyways.
And frankly, like when you can talk all you want about how amazing your product is or how amazing your courses are when it comes to course marketing. But when you have like a customer, or if you have an influencer talk about it to their audience on your behalf, that's going to be 10 times, 100 times more effective.
Right.
And so that's really how we got started.
Yeah. So cool. So I remember when you guys did it in the past where you kind of did a Zoom meeting, you would record it, you would have it on there. And now you guys are getting it more polished. Like now you actually are flying people out. You flew myself out. And it was a great experience. What have you guys done beyond like the baseline, the fundamental of like already having, subscribers and readership? How did you guys start like getting the word out there as you guys made this thing better and better?
Yeah, so obviously in the last year or so, we've been really heavily invested in improving the quality of our courses. And that has come from what you said of just not putting up live courses, because it's distracting when you watch like an instructor answer someone's question and you're watching the recording. It's like watching the recording of a webinar.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a weird question that came up, or I don't know, they're saying hi guys all the time. So we wanted to move towards pre-recorded just for better listening and better experience for our customers.
Yeah.
But now that we're sort of moving to this more polished product and moving into creating like a better experience, marketing for that has also gotten a little bit more polished and I'd say more templated. Prior to us moving towards this more polished experience, our marketing was like, honestly, and I shouldn't say it's just prior, because it still is, the main lever of our business.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, prior to that, we relied on our blog and visitor traffic because our blog's domain ranking is like crazy and
It is
super popular. And then also, it's like our email list. And to this day, those are still our two biggest growth levers for the business, for marketing our business. Thanks for the chicken, guys. So basically, essentially our whole business is based upon the blog success and then our email list and all of the subscribers to that. Without our email list, we'd be dead in the water. And so we take that very, very seriously.
Okay.
And what we do now is actually when we do email marketing, we often try not to sell. It's a weird concept, but our readers are so loyal to the brand and to Pep as a thought leader that if he just came straight out of the gate being like, buy this course, it would honestly reduce the value that we're providing to them because we're just asking, not giving. So a lot of the content that we pushed through email marketing is actually more around thought leadership. And so that's really comes through our newsletter. And so one of the little tactics we've added lately is that, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but online Pep's been sort of sharing less about, like, he's been sharing less of our blog posts and less of our content on his Twitter feed and on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Instead, he's just sharing his sort of general thoughts as being a business leader. And what we do is we actually put that at the front and center of our newsletter, and it's improved our engagement so much in the last few months since we just added this small little piece of delight.
Yeah.
That's like, here's what's on his mind this week. It's not at all relevant. We're not trying to push any course or content or product related to it, but it's just something that he's learning along the way as he builds this business. So I think just like not coming out of the gate and trying to sell, that's been a really big difference for us in the last few months.
It's so funny. So I feel like I'm Pep's number one fan. I feel like sometimes my comments get the most likes off of his shares on LinkedIn. You can ask him. It's probably true. But like what he's like so to the point and direct. And if there's somebody out there in the marketing world that I have like a really deep respect for, it's him. And true story, there was one time I got an email and it was a drip of some sort. It might've been years ago. And the subject line of the email was all lowercase, please respond. As if he was just like apathetic, be like, come on, dude, just say something back. And I was like, it hit me with such a level of guilt that like we've done so much of like that subject line for like ourselves too, because it worked. Like we get so many more replies from that. So, but honestly, if Pep like said, Jonathan, buy this, I would be like, okay, here's my credit card, take it. Like I'm gonna buy it right now. And that's just because that's who Pep is. So like a whole like holistic, it makes everything else that you do so much easier because of who he is and what he's already done and built, right?
And you trust that he's not going to just ask you to do something. He's going to tell you should buy this course because you actually need it.
Right.
Because of all those years of equity he's built up like as a brand name.
Yep.
It's funny that like whole like lowercase subject line, like that's just all these other little tactics that we implement, which are like, make it look as personal as possible. Yeah. We try to have our email subject lines be as not like clickbait by any means, but we don't want to give it all away. I find it so easy at this point now to spot a marketing email. So when you write something, and like one of the newsletters that I'm obsessed with is Morning Brew. Have you ever subscribed to them?
No.
It's Morning Brew. I honestly, it's funny. I'm bragging about them, but I'm like, who actually is it's so hard for me to ever remember the name.
Pep runs it as a side hustle.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's hard for me to remember the name of the brand, but but it's Common Bond, and essentially their newsletters are like really, really copy and text heavy, which ours are as well. We don't add any like flourishes, really. We hardly ever add imagery because we don't want it to feel like we're marketing to you.
Yeah.
And I find that we've looked at their newsletter before too, have been really inspired, and their subject lines are like very witty, often to the point, but also just like leave a little bit to be desired, which is what we try to emulate.
That's awesome. Okay. So So do you guys have any different setups when it comes to, I saw you guys as like, pay-per-click ad, like social ads and things like that in the past too. I don't know if I see them anymore as much. Maybe it's because I'm like an instructor and you've excluded me. So the blog, would you guys say that that's like the top of funnel way to get people in for the email subscribers? Is that like your strategy there?
Yeah, so it's one of our channels. Right now, we do PPC, but mostly through search, so Google Ads.
Yeah.
We do occasional paid social, but we're actually just kicking that off again because we've trained one of our junior marketers on it, and we want her to just run and go with it. And she's like, oh my God, I've never done this before, but sure, you're just going to give me a budget. Sure, I'll try it.
But I went through the Conversion Excel Institute and now I'm a genius. I can easily do this.
Exactly. She's doing the growth marketing mini degree and we're like, okay, well, you're doing this, so you got to put it into action. For top of funnel, obviously the blog is our main driver. But if you've ever noticed, we don't really add a ton of CPAs on the blog.
Right.
In fact, it's we do have a few pop-ups on there which work really well. They're powered by Exit Intel, which is one of our partners. And so we fire some pop-ups. One of the other really effective strategies for us for getting email subscribers who are already on our site actually hasn't just been generic pop-ups, but it's this idea of a quiz funnel. Have you heard of this before?
I've in a really well done way. I have not done it myself, but I've seen them. Mm-hmm. So tell me.
Yeah. So basically the pop-ups that we put on our site are we tailor them to the specific sales page or the course page that they're on. And then we have a quiz around the topic at hand. Mm. So it's test your Google Analytics knowledge or test your conversion optimization knowledge.
Yeah.
And then, we essentially get people's email before they do the quiz. Once they complete the quiz, we then send them their email results over email. And from there, we can then cross-sell and upsell them on the actual course. So that for us has been a huge driver of email subscribers.
So cool.
But those are for people on the site. And then again, just to get people to the site, it's mainly, we're really focused on Google Ads and search, SEO efforts.
I wonder if you guys can do that. Let's say you run some paid social ads and you use Typeform, which I know has they call it Logic Jump. Oh, you do? You do the actual quizzes through the ads too?
Yeah, not yet through paid social, but we do use Typeform, which is funny.
Well, maybe you guys can try that out, because if it works on site, so the reason why I'm asking is we've had the thought of doing that for is your current pay-per-click, agency good enough? A super horrible headline, but spitballing ideas out there, and then actually take them through Typeform and then give them the result too. And we were thinking about actually not even gating the results, just giving it to them. And if they're open to it, there's the option to take the next step, which is a chat with us. But really cool to hear that you guys are finding success with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good method too for us. We just know that our sales cycle comes through our email list. So it's once we get someone's email, we'll nurture them through just, branded content, not super salesy content. So we want to get that gated email, and that's a measure of success for us. But they could totally work for you. Right.
No, that's true. Awesome. Okay. What do you guys do differently from a middle of funnel to bottom of funnel?
So essentially it's what we do is when you think about course marketing, we always kind of work backwards. Actually, we work from the bottom of the funnel to the top of funnel. Mm-hmm. So we usually, every time we launch a course, we prioritize our current customers. And so we'll let them know before often any of our leads or even marketing it to the general public. We let them know that the course is live in the Institute through email usually. And then we'll do sometimes a little in-app message with intercom.
Yeah.
And then we'll start to see how many people are adopting it, what's the uptake on that. Maybe we'll send another email or remind them that it's there. And then we move backwards towards the middle of the funnel, which is actually it's a whole different program that runs at the same time. So it does kind of run in tandem because we'll sort of pre-seed the course with a webinar. And this usually actually launches before the course goes live, but occasionally it'll launch at the same time. And the webinar is sort of our middle of the funnel play, which is we market it We market it to our customers as well as to leads. And what we try to do is we get them to attend the webinar with our instructors. I believe you've done a webinar with us before, right? And from there, we'll just heavily market that over email for 3 to 4 weeks. Then finally, once they've attended the webinar, knowing if it's customers or if it's leads, we'll send them the promo emails for when the course is actually live in their account. And then they can either, if they're already a customer, they can just add it to the roadmap. If they're not, we'll send them where they can buy it.
Right.
And then from there, moving like even further to the top of the funnel, we often will shape our content strategy on our blog and with our gated resources, because we create a ton of opt-in offers like across the blog. We'll shape those around the topic of the course. And then we'll launch like 5 to 6 different opt-in offers across relevant blog posts that are already pre-existing to already get traffic.
That's intense.
So it's actually it's been really effective. But basically 5 or 6 little blog post opt-in offers tailored to the topic. That's where we can get a little bit, move people into the middle of the funnel. And then the content strategy for the blog, the topics that we launch every quarter relate to the product roadmap. So knowing what courses are coming up and then kind of where we want our thought leadership to land related to those topics so that we get the interest, get the visitors. And then it's just sort of like, what's that called? A fly trap or flywheel? Whatever.
Let's just call it a fly trap. We can coin anything.
Yeah, right? It's the new CXL fly trap.
That's awesome.
So sort of goes backwards, forwards, all that. Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys have any like cross-pollination? Speaking of like flowers now and fly traps, I'm thinking like Venus fly traps. Yes. Do you guys have any cross-pollination between your agency and your institute? Meaning like, do students turn into clients and do clients turn into students?
Yes, that happens, but we don't actively really push for that.
Sure.
So our agency, the reason being that like for a customer to be even ready for them to like use our agency services, they have to be, first of all, from like a very, very, very successful, usually enterprise business.
Yeah.
So that means like driving like hopefully about $1 million in revenue a month.
Yeah.
And then at least a minimum of 100K visitors to their website every month, because, you
That's
can't really you can't do statistically significant conversion optimization without that.
Yeah.
So basically we have often our courses will get a lot of the individual practitioners who are just like maybe freelancers or maybe a few people on a marketing team. So they're not going to be the ideal customer. So we don't actively pitch a ton of agency services, except what we do of late, and it's actually been working kind of well, is that with our weekly newsletter that we send out on Thursdays, we create a version for the leads that we know by using Clearbit, match those criteria. And so we segment them and we send them the same newsletter, but we always add a small little section related to our agency. So we'll maybe talk about like we'll have some sort of tailored offer. Like, do you want a free audit of your Google Analytics?
Yeah.
Do you want a free look at your like how your site's performing? Like we're happy to offer that. Talk to one of our conversion experts. And for that, we've been getting, and honestly, like this is really good for us. We've been getting maybe 1 new lead a week. And that's enough for our business.
I was going to say, considering the size of the deal that it could be, that's tremendous.
Exactly. Yeah, if you get 1 new lead a week and then you close 1 a month, that's enough. And as running an agency, I'm sure you're aware, is that like every time you close a new deal, you have to hire. So it's kind of like, we don't want to close too many.
Right.
We just want to close just enough so we don't have to hire too many new analysts.
Well, the institute is a scalable part, right? Because you're right. Like luckily, the size of your clients are bigger than what we would normally close. So we have volumes of like 20 to 30 clients that we bring on board. Right. And then we have like a capacity ratio that we, is at a certain percentage, that is the trigger to hire more people. So, but it is tough. Like that one client, if or how many you guys have, but that's really, really cool to see that you guys have some overlap. And for the people listening, Clearbit is like a data enrichment tool. Is that correct? Like it actually gives you more data about an email address. Like it unravels everything almost and figures out who it belongs to, how tall they are, how much they weigh. Just kidding. Not that. but all the firmographic stuff, which is really rad. So you can like segment like you guys are doing, which is super cool. More for obviously B2B than B2C.
Yeah, exactly. You can see their industry, or like I was saying, if you want to see monthly traffic, we just use Alexa Rank as a substitute, and it's super, super helpful. So you can get very, very hyper segmented with only asking someone for their email address.
Yeah.
And as we know, the more form fields you add to one of your forms, the less likely someone traditionally will fill it out. I mean, depending on the offer, but for a gated resource, no one wants to put in 20 fields.
No, it's so smart. It's brilliant, to be honest. We I don't know why we're we should, that's something we're doing. I'm gonna note it down.
Do it.
You know what's really funny is that one of the reasons why I asked in regards to like the cross pollination is that our biggest client ever, $40,000 plus a month, was a student through CXL Institute of my course. How crazy is that?
That's so funny.
Like what kind of attribution?
Crazy. Yeah, look at that. That's a great ROI.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope you've written about that somewhere. No?
we will in our milestone recap. But if you guys wanted a piece of content to use to get other instructors, there you go. Now you can use that.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a great way to attract them. We often seed and hire people for CXL based on them completing CXL courses. That's like a shush thing, but we do often see if people have like taken our courses or ever like completed a mini degree. One of our like really, really strong CRO strategists was a graduate of like way back when PEP used to do live CRO mini degree courses, like in PEP's cohort. So
nice. Yeah. There you go. There's other things that can be value other than just making money from your course. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Alexa, anything else that we're missing? I know we're coming up on the end here. What are your thoughts?
I think honestly, hopefully those nuggets were pretty helpful. One of the things I think I'll leave you with is just that basically yes, top of funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, templated stuff's all really important. But the real reason we are successful, I believe, is just the relentlessness of it all. Mm-hmm. We do long form, well-sourced blog stuff. We spend a ton of time creating these opt-in offers and moving through the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel. But the biggest differentiator for us and why it has worked is that we've just been doing it for so long.
Right.
We've spent 8 years investing heavily in it. And we, even to this day, we just crank out content all the time. And that's really what's gotten us to this point of tons of respect, tons of brand equity, 640 plus blog posts and counting. So you can't give up after 2 years. You just got to keep it.
I've heard that saying, not I don't think it's necessarily a quote, but just keep going. The more you can keep going, you will catch a break. And sometimes you only need one break, and that's enough for a snowball effect to happen in your business. So people who are persistent, consistent, and also resilient when things, when crap hits the fan, that bad things happen too. Those are the people who I've seen make it most of the time. So keep that in mind as you guys are thinking about, putting together your course. If you already have one, how you go about it. There are basically no shortcuts. This is what the takeaway that I'm getting from this this segment here. But Alexis, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I know your time is super valuable, so we totally appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and great to sort of meet you.
Yeah.
One day we'll meet in person.
All right, we'll get closer. All right, thank you so much, Alexa.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Hey,
Len, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm amazing. I'm actually in a room where we had to shut off the AC, so I'm sweating a little bit, and maybe the camera will pick that up, but it gets too loud when we have it running, so we got to do it for the fans,
Well, Southern California is the perfect part of the world to operate without AC in a closed room.
I'm just happy we're not in the desert. But super pumped to have you on, man. For the people who don't know, you're the CMO at Podia, and Podia is one of my favorite brand crushes of all companies actually out there, not just in the course platform world. I'm in love with your illustrations and your branding. And today we're talking about course marketing. Basically, if you have things to teach, how do you go about that? What are some examples and all that kind of stuff? So you cool to take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited, and I'm Very grateful that you're letting me in on Pony being your brand crush.
Yes.
Shoot me your address. We'll get you some swag.
Oh dang! Okay, I'm about to do that. This whole episode is canceled. Let me finish that. Just kidding. I'll get that after. So you guys have a decent amount of, I would call them, and you call them probably something different, like teachers on your platform that can sell courses. Mm-hmm. Certain memberships. They can have digital downloads. Like I'm actually reading off your site right now. You make it very simple and easy. Now, there's probably like some fundamentals that go into making sure that you are either having a successful launch and ongoing success, or it's going to fall flat on its face. Like where would you start off by teaching people about that?
That's a good question. And the first thing that I think surprises a lot of people is when we see launches fail, when courses don't sell, a lot of the time, probably over 50%, it's not because they had the wrong tactics. It's not because they had the wrong launch strategy. It's because they didn't think to create something that people want.
Okay.
And that's something that I would urge any creator, as you're thinking about your launch, as you're thinking about building your product, whether it's a course or a download or whatever it might be, make sure that you're validating your idea as you go. And that is truly one of the best marketing tactics you can actually apply. And I can walk you through that. I mean, to me, that's a core marketing strategy. A lot of people think about marketing as like picking the channels and thinking which way you're going to get in front of people. But to me, picking the right idea and validating the idea is one of the core tenets of a successful course launch. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you spend all the time building something, you have to redo it. A lot of times, it just means, changes to how you position it, changes to how you talk about it. Mm-hmm. Now, there are a couple of ways that we can approach validating an idea. The first is figure out if what you're building is something that people are already paying for.
Okay.
A lot of people will say, hey, I have this course idea, I have this skill that I have. I'm going to build a course around it, and then I'm going to try and sell it to people. And then what turns out to happen is that they build something that people aren't really willing to pay to have solved for them. Mm-hmm. I'll give you some examples. So if you create a course around how to cook eggs, that is a problem that a lot of people have, right? A lot of people are like, I don't know how to cook eggs that well. But if you actually do the research, like egg cookbooks don't sell that well.
Okay.
And that's actually a really good...
That has to be a nugget that we got to drop real quick because we are talking about the chicken world here. So I'm just going to give you that. Continue, please.
I appreciate it. We are in the chicken verse. So when it comes to validating ideas, one of the very first things that you can do is think about the problem that you're solving, and then go to Amazon. Are there books that are selling on that topic?
Okay.
Go to Udemy. I don't recommend selling courses on Udemy, but it's a great, massive marketplace for courses.
Yeah.
And you can see if people are actually selling courses on this topic.
Okay.
That is probably the first thing that you can do to validate whether there are people out there who will pay to have this problem solved for them. The second thing you can do, if you're still kind of building your course, is go out to a community like Reddit. Mm-hmm. So Reddit is, everybody that is listening to this podcast, I have probably 80% of the people have spent time on Reddit in the last week, and the other 20% are like lying. Because everybody has been on Reddit. Like, everybody wastes time on Reddit.
Can I say something real quick on that?
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
So I just got into touch about like the whole, I don't know if you heard of the FIRE movement, like financial independence, retire early. Have you heard about that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So literally, like, I'm reading a book about it. It's called Playing with Fire. They suggest going onto Reddit for like the financial independence subreddit. And like literally 2 days later of being there, I'm like, how did I not discover Reddit earlier? And so I am one of those liars that you just mentioned, basically. So they do exist. I'm way late to the game.
Welcome to the dark side. Yeah, welcome to the dark side. You'll never have free time again. And the reality about Reddit is there's 300 million monthly active users. 300 million. So there are like 7 billion people on this planet, right? So more than 4% of the planet uses Reddit, which is insane. And it is the world's largest open discussion forum, which means that if there are problems that people have, people are discussing it somewhere on Reddit.
Yeah.
And so look at the problem that you're solving with your course, search for it on Reddit. So use search terms like, how do I, how can I, any tips.
Yeah.
The kinds of search terms that indicate that people are struggling with something. And that's where you're going to find those problems that people are like, yeah, like this is something I'm working to solve. This is something I need help with. And just make sure that the problem that you're solving falls under that category. Or if it's not, you can pivot your sales page, pivot your title. Just make sure that when you're talking about the problem that your course solves, you're talking in the same language that people use when they describe these really deep burning pains that they have.
Got it.
If we talk about, so if we know we have a validated idea, that's kind of my soapbox rant. I always have to get out of the way whenever people ask me about course marketing. We can get into the fun stuff and get into how to actually get people to buy your course.
Okay. Bill, so I had one thought when you were talking about seeing if there's already demand either on Amazon or on Reddit. Now, some people might be listening and thinking, oh, well, or you mentioned Udemy, for example. And they might think, oh, well, there's already books or courses out there, so that shows that need is already being met, and therefore I should not pursue because I have competition. It doesn't seem like that's the point you're trying to make, right? It's just like, no, there's actually demand. People are paying money for this, so there's a good chance you can be successful too. Is that correct?
I'm actually really glad you brought that up because that's actually something that when we talk to creators, a lot of people do this process of validating their idea, and they come up with something that's clearly validated, and they're ready to go. But then they think, well, that's a good idea, but there's already a course about that, and it stops them in their tracks, right? Because for the exact reason that you said, this need is already being met. So here's the thing: there are no new problems. But there are no new problems. If you think about productivity, for example, so Seneca wrote about productivity 2,000 years ago. Gautier wrote about productivity in the 1400s. Ben Franklin wrote about productivity 200 years ago. And this is insane to me. Every year for the last 18 years, there has been a new bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list about productivity. Is everybody productive yet? Like, is this problem solved? Is this problem solved for every single person on the planet? No, of course not. Right? And that's the thing, is that just because somebody else has solved a problem for somebody doesn't mean that problem is solved for everybody.
Right.
And your course, the course that you're going to create, just by virtue of the fact that you're the one creating it, is not going to be the same as everybody else's. This is going to be the perfect course for your core audience.
For sure. I mean, you can say the same thing about you guys weren't potentially the first course platform. Neither were we the first, pay-per-click and conversion rate optimization agency. We saw some things that were lacking in other things, and that's why we try to make a better solution. So, the proof with what you actually mentioned based off of science and saying, has everybody solved their productivity? No, because Reddit exists. So that's the other side of the coin. But to your point, like there's a lot more to capture and gain as far as giving different solutions to people who are in need.
Yeah, and that's actually a really smart insight around looking at what other service providers were lacking. When you're looking at those Amazon reviews, when you're looking at those Udemy reviews, you want to look at those 1-star reviews, those 2-star reviews to see what needs those courses, those books left unmet.
Yeah.
Because if people are leaving 1 or 2-star reviews for this book, for this course, for this product, chances are they're still very much open to a solution because this problem is not solved yet.
Right. That makes sense. That's beautiful. I like that a lot. So let's say you do validate your idea and you move forward, you're building out your course. Obviously the content of the course matters a lot too, but where would you take it if you were, to help me out figuring out how I set myself up for success? Like what would be the next step?
The next step is, as soon as you decide you're going to build this product and you're going to sell something, and even before then, is to start building your email list and getting people to say, yes, Jonathan, yes, Sally, yes, Nate, I want to hear from you. I want to sign up and have you in my inbox. The conversion rates and the customer acquisition costs that we see on email, especially for first-time course creators, just massively outperform every other channel.
Nice.
And the best way to start doing this, if you Google list building, email marketing tactics, you're going to find 9 million different things that, you have to be doing in order to succeed at this. But I think the easiest way for people to think about this is your ideal customers are already somewhere, right? They're already listening to somebody. So go to Google Forms and create a free survey. Send it to a few people who you think of as your ideal customers and ask, what blogs do you read? What podcasts do you listen to? What YouTube channels do you subscribe to? Who are your favorite social media accounts to follow? That's where your audience hangs out.
Okay. I like that.
Then your job becomes to get in front of those audiences, right? So you can do that in a reasonably straightforward way. So for example, for blogs, put those blogs into a free tool. Like Moz has a link explorer, which is an awesome tool. And you can find out what a blog's most popular content is. What does really, really well on their blog. So if I wanted to, if I found out that I was building a course on, PPC management, and I wanted to find out who wants to learn about PPC management, where are they hanging out online? Obviously, they're going to be reading the Client Boost blog.
Of course.
Right? So I'm going to, of course, they're smart people.
Nugget.
And I'm going to go to, the Link Explorer tool. I'm going to pop in Client Boost. I'm going to see what your best performing content is. What are the top pages on that blog? And I'm just going to think critically about what does really well. Are they list posts? Do they tend to be case studies? Do they tend to be actionable, or do they tend to be more thought pieces? Are they long form, short form? Look at the topics that they cover. Just try to get some sense of what performs really, really well, and then come up with 3 ideas for articles that you can write for that publication.
Like a guest
post.
This
is one of those. Exactly.
Smart,
a guest post. And this is one of those points where a lot of creators, especially first-time creators, think, that's a good idea, but why would they want my content? Like, why would they want me to write for them?
Which is ironic, because why would anyone want to buy the course to begin with?
Exactly, which is like the total imposter syndrome that all of us have. But the reality is, as somebody who's built multiple content teams and has run multiple blogs, the hardest part of running a high-quality blog is creating high-quality content. It's extraordinarily resource-intensive, it's expensive, it's time-consuming. And so if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to hand you this piece of really valuable content on silver platter, will you just publish it? I'll give it to you for free. It's a no-brainer. Yep. It's a favor to me, actually, because it's going to save me a bunch of money on paying writers. It's going to save me a bunch of time. It's going to save me a bunch of energy on editing this content. And so for me as a blog owner, I love when people pitch really, really high quality ideas.
Asterisks about that, the high quality. I agree with you. Totally. Yeah, and this is actually interesting. So I'll describe if you go through this process, the way that I'm describing it, this is very, very different from the way that most people pitch guest posts. The way that most guest post pitches get made are somebody scrapes a list of 1,000 blogs or 5,000 blogs that are potentially relevant. They take a single form email, they put some mail merge fields in it to make it feel quote unquote personal. Like, hey, Jonathan, love what you're doing over at, brackets Client Boost. And they send the same 3 pitches to 1,000 people. Right.
And of course, you can't create a relevant pitch for 1,000 people. You simply can't. And so that's why most guest post pitches are awful, and they get ignored or deleted, or worse, they ruin somebody's day.
Right.
And you get angry emails back, right? The way that we're doing it is, instead of investing all of that time into building a massive list and then sending really diluted pitches for all of them, we're going to spend all of our time creating incredibly crafted pitches for a very small list. We don't have to spend a lot of time coming up with a big list here, because we're going to create incredibly high quality pitches for a small list of highly targeted blogs, because we went out, we learned what blogs, what podcasts, what YouTube channels our audience already listens to. So it's validated, right? We already know that our customers are here. And so now we can put all of our energy, rather than spamming a bunch of people, we can put all of our energy into creating the best possible pitch. And so that's why we're doing, that research onto what performs really well there. and what kind of content, what formats, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to craft a really, really customized pitch that says, all right, hey, I'm a big fan of your content. You can, because you've spent all this time on their blog now, you can pay them a genuine compliment about some of the content you like best.
Yeah.
You can really butter them up here, and then come up with your 3 ideas and pitch them and say, hey, have some ideas for some content that would, that I think your audience would really find value in.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of these? I'd love to write them for your blog. Just let me know. And the key there is when you come up with these ideas, these are focused on being 100% valuable to the audience. They will solve a problem for the audience, whether or not, this is critical, whether or not somebody buys your course, this article is going to leave them with a solution to a problem.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you will succeed at guest posting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so write the article, make it valuable. If you Google then marketing, guest posting, guides on this. And then from there, link back to a free download that gets people into your course funnel.
Right.
And you rinse, you repeat, and your list is going to grow. Same thing for podcasts, same thing for YouTube channels, everything. The number one thing you can do if you're just starting out to sell more courses is to find out where your audience is and to be there.
Right. And I really like how you took the angle of, let's assume you don't have a large budget, because there's a lot of things you can do if you have money, but if your resources more time, you basically described my early days of Client Boost. I would go out and sometimes I would have the actual piece done already and I would shop it around, but I wouldn't stop until I actually got a response. And if I got a no, I asked them to like tell me why, and not like in an annoying way, but more so like, well, what can I change or what can I create to make it more valuable? Because a lot of people, like you say, they do the spray and pray approach. And you're right. Like people send me pitch email. I probably get like 5 a day, and they're either like, can I write on your blog? Can I advertise on your blog and pay you for a link? Or can I give you an article that talks about like dental hygiene? And I'm like, you did no research. Like, that's not even what we do. So if a person is like doing their homework, and this is the hard part where I think a lot of people get lost, because at the end of the day, don't confuse being busy with like effectiveness, because your output, like what you're trying to achieve at the end, works way better with the example that you're giving, because you're wanting to get that yes, and that yes can turn into another yes from that person or that blog, or you now use it as like a, what we call like a yes ladder approach to get, other people to say yes, or other blogs, because you've already proven it works for the first yes you got. And it's a shame that people try to shortcut that.
100%. And I think you owe yourself a chicken sound for that insight, because that is, yeah, you got to give yourself one there. And this is something you've been so good at. I mean, around guest posting, around getting Client Boost off the ground with that strategy. And you're right. This absolutely is a strategy for people who want to do this on a lean budget. And the reality is, I mean, most of the creators that we see, their first course, you're doing it as a side hustle, right? You're doing it as something that you're kind of exploring on the side. And one of the beauties of this, you don't want to spend a ton of money promoting your side hustle. You maybe don't have the budget for it yet, because like you said, if you have budget, there are a ton of really effective marketing channels that you can explore.
Right.
But one of the beauties of doing this when you're first getting started is that there's a very good chance that your first course is going to look very little like your third course, your fourth course, and your fifth course.
Yeah.
And what this lets you do is to build a really, really valuable marketing asset, which is your email list, that's going to help you as you go down this creator journey. Even if you choose to write about different topics, even if you choose to teach different things, this email list is going to be an asset that will help you
100%.
for as long as you are exploring this idea of creating courses.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And a lot of people, they, at least from my opinion too, is that they try to go for the quicker win, but some of these times is like you should put in the amount of time and effort and have the patience, because ultimately what I'm going for is thought leadership, and thought leadership isn't shortcut. Like it's built over time and repeated, executions of quality and things like that too. And so, like you said, if you plant the seed and you have that email list growing and people want to hear about you, eventually your imposter syndrome disappears and you're just saying, I'm the greatest person in the world on this topic. That's at least what I think sometimes, but then I get hit with reality. But it's something that you can't shortcut. So I'm really glad that you're bringing that up full circle.
Totally. You can't shortcut it. And it also gives you a bunch of reusable marketing assets. Like if you have content, if you have great content, that will open the door to thousands of other channels that you can now explore, thousands of other marketing opportunities you can now explore, right? If you have a great piece of content, well, now you have a really powerful asset that you can test with some paid ads, right? With some retargeting, you can build a whole page funnel using content. Whereas for most creators, running ads directly to a course sales page for the very first time they run a course typically doesn't end super well because number one, they haven't read your blog, and number two, the funnel just isn't long enough.
Right.
There isn't enough nurturing going on, and so creating that content, creating those assets, is going to give you a lot to repurpose as you grow.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And then if you think about, the more established course creators on the Podia platform right now, if they do really great with content, let's just say written content, do they branch out in other things? Like obviously we're talking audio right now. It could be podcasts. It could be webinars. I know that one piece of content can open the doors for other things like we talked about, or it can help even with your paid acquisition. Is there like a marketing mix that you see that are working really well for some of the top creators on your platform right now?
I would say that almost all of our top creators, their marketing mix was email first from day one.
Yeah.
Or email first from the day of the inflection point, right? It was email first from the day that the business started to see success.
Yeah.
Because they realized that once they kind of own their audience and own their relationship with their audience, they can write their own ticket because they can use that email list to get insight into what products to build, get insight into how much they can charge, to get insight into how to write better sales copy. And over time, that email list became the launch pad for their very, very successful courses. And then, yes, absolutely. People do branch out. We're obviously seeing a massive kind of tidal wave of podcasting coming out now.
Yeah.
So many creators are jumping into the mix here. And, is in a very much like the content world, like the written content world, or even the YouTube world, it is getting noisy. And the reality is you can be really, really successful with podcasting as a marketing channel.
Yeah.
But you've got to be in the 1%, right? Like the quality has to be there.
Right.
It's very much like we talked about with written content. So I wouldn't do any marketing channel really just to check the box, just to get it into your marketing mix.
Right.
But podcasting is really one of those. Yeah, podcasting really is one of those channels where the quality matters most.
Right. 100%. But again, like you said, I actually never thought of an email list with all the angles and benefits that you just mentioned, which is like, every time I'm talking to somebody on the show, like I get a little wiser and I come back to my marketing team. I'm like, we're changing things up. And they're like, you got to stop having calls with people. And I agree with them to some degree, but it's amazing, that angle. I like that a lot. Is there anything else from like a fundamental and for everybody listening too, I think it's really important to understand, like, you don't have to graduate from one marketing channel or strategy or tactic. Like, you can keep doing more and getting better and better at it. Like your written content never really stops. Is there anything that you think that we should leave our listeners off with in regards to, heads up, don't make these mistakes, or keep this in mind as you go along now that they know, a stronger foundation?
I think that the best thing that we could leave this conversation with is, I want to take something that you said and apply it to every single thing that creators should do when they do marketing. And you mentioned that when you did your guest posting and sent all these pitches, and people said no, and you always asked why.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a really, really key insight that I want to underline for people, because when you're doing marketing for online courses, no matter what you're doing, whether you're building your email launch sequence, you're building your email list, you're doing list building campaigns, you're trying to do guest posts, you're doing giveaways, you're doing paid marketing, you're doing podcasting. Take every possible opportunity to figure out what you could be doing a little bit better. And to do that, all it takes very often is saying, hey, why did, just out of curiosity, I'd love to know why you passed on this,
right?
So I can do better. Or I'd love to know why you didn't buy my course today, so I can do better. I'd love to know, why you didn't think my article was worth sharing, because I'd love to do better.
Yeah.
And if you do that at every turn, it's impossible not to grow to a point where you're just getting really, really good.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's scary you say this because literally this morning on the way to work, I was listening to a podcast doing, research for myself. Just kidding. It was a side one. But he basically said all progress starts with speaking the truth. And if you can be kind about it, the way that you're asking, somebody saying no to you and you're like, but why? Well, have a little bit more of a courteous attempt and approach to it and be like, so that I can learn better and not, waste your potential time in the future. What could I have done differently to maybe earn a yes? I realize that my chance might have been gone now and you might not accept any guest posts, but with the intention of being, honest and pure, because that truth, it's the same thing that goes against like everything in the business world, in my opinion, where you might have a client or you might have a student on your course that's not happy, but it's better to know the truth earlier rather than later, when the ultimate thing that you don't want to have happen is when like they cancel their subscription or they leave as a client and things like that too. So the analogy I use is like, if you have a cough, it's going to get very dark very quickly right now. It's if you have a cough, either you have a cold or you have lung cancer, but like figure it out early so that you can actually treat it and then do a lot better. So I kind of stole the thunder from you, but I am going to give you this one, which is like our ultimate cluck, because that is so true, right? You don't know if you don't know at the end of the day. And so the faster you're able to get those truths to be brought out, the faster you can improve, the faster you can get better at what you're doing.
Absolutely. I love it.
Cool, man. Well, super, super thankful to have you on the show. We might bring you back when it comes to the evolution of course marketing, depending on what people are asking about this actual episode. So really appreciate your time, Len. Thanks for being with us.
Likewise, Jonathan. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right, people. I have a person who is running a very, very successful company, one that I have respect for too, especially when it comes to course marketing. We have Matt Cooper, the CEO of Skillshare, on the line with us. Matt, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So you ventured into creating this platform that is Skillshare. And we're going to be talking about course marketing, but also, of course, like as the name implies of your company, people wanting to share their skills and be able to charge for it and things like that too. So instead of talking, I'm completely okay talking about Skillshare and the platform itself too. And anytime that you want to do a shameless plug, do it. Because again, I want to be grateful and thankful for your time. But if you were seeing a, combined average around the most successful people that you have on Skillshare, what are some commonalities that you see them having from like a foundational perspective?
Yeah, I think the best classes have a combination of things. There's sort of the topics that they're teaching is of interest to our community. So our classes tend to skew towards creative topics. So design, illustration, fine art, photography. There are some lifestyle things. So when you think of a creative audience and kind of that sort of core user of the 28-year-old freelance designer, or the person who is a engineer by day but loves digital photography at night, what are the topics and skills and interests that they're going to have that is going to be more common? So some of our best producing classes around Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, certain like street photography, so things that are both sort of hot and topical, but also just very practical and useful. So the topics, one, the personality of the teacher, the teachers who are engaging and animated and really know how to bring that content to life. They obviously perform much better. Yeah, there's just a certain energy that attracts people and keeps them watching. So I think that's another big component. Also, just the way they structure the content. If there's a sort of a logical flow and ideally a narrative flow, it really, I don't care what you're doing, whether it's marketing, teaching, if there's a storyline that people can follow that will keep you hooked, it's going to be more successful. So that's kind of a broad-ranging bit of advice, but the teachers who have that kind of narrative flow to their classes tend to perform best. Yeah. And then, I guess finally, just the audio-visual production. If it's high-quality audio, the lighting is good, real appeal really catches people's attention.
That makes sense. And so, even though the topic here is on course marketing and like how you market your course, one of the things that marketing can never really help with is, being successful with a bad product. And so the foundation that you just gave for some of the things that you've seen on the inside work really well is awesome. It also sounds like, some of the things you mentioned, like Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, or anything that's camera related, they seem like they have a broad appeal, but they're also very technical to understand. So do you think the technicality of something that is harder to master is part of why these creators are successful?
I think a mix. Some of that, I think that it definitely applies to some categories, but there are also a lot of really high-performing classes are really about the creative process and creative lifestyle. How do you get yourself in a creative mindset, and kind of how do you manage your personal life as well as your professional life to get the most out of creativity? So there's a little bit of a mix between kind of that hardcore technical, you do A, B, C, D, E, versus how do you get yourself in a position to do all those things and do them really well.
So when it comes to deciding on the platform to create your content, I noticed that Skillshare is seems like a subscription service itself to learn new things over time, where other platforms is like, hey, you create your course, you're in charge of your own marketing, all that kind of stuff. How is Skillshare different? Why should people consider doing that? And I'm sure you guys have a vetting process too on who you allow on there. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we are a completely open platform. Anybody can come in and teach. We have about 8,000 teachers who are teaching about 20,000 classes, and those teachers are from all over the world. It's actually about 60% of our teachers are from outside the U.S., so it's a very big global community of experts. They pick the content, they pick the structure. We have some guidelines. We definitely have quality standards that they have to meet to be on the platform. But then once you're on the platform, we drive a lot of the traffic to you. And so I think the value that Skillshare brings, the community that we've built, we've got close to 9 million users. I mean, we have our own marketing funnel. So we are bringing people to your doorstep. And I think we have had teachers who have gone off and tried some of these kind of more self-service platforms that allow you to hang out your own shingle as a teacher. I think they've underestimated how much foot traffic we bring to them. And so they'll often come back. So I mean, we're tracking our entire marketing funnel very aggressively, from visitor to free trial to paid subscriber to long-term retention and renewal. So we've got a pretty well-built marketing machine to make sure that we're continually delivering an audience to our teachers.
That makes a ton of sense. And I see like even the individual like topics of like animation or creative writing, there's followers behind each topic or category. What happens when you, let's say, are a top 10 course creator on Skillshare? Like how much juice do you guys give them? Because I want our listeners to know, we talked about also like the fact that like if you already have thought leadership, if you already have a brand, if you're already established in the industry, and then you go and you teach about these, like let's say we talked about digital marketing, which is what we do, for example. I come in with a somewhat established presence. I can't call myself the best or anything like that, but I have a following already. And so let's say I break into the top 10. How do you guys wine and dine me, so to speak? Like, how do I know that like I'm in good hands with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, our top teachers are making pretty good money. I think our number one teacher last month made $57,000 in December alone. Okay. So I think that's a steady flow of consistent income is certainly a pretty nice hook. Yeah. But then we also have a top teacher program. So our top 100 or so teachers, we give them a lot of support and care and feeding, and answer questions, and they can pick up the phone and call somebody, and we do special programs throughout the year for those teachers. So we definitely try to take care of our best teachers and keep them happy and make sure that they've got what they need to be successful at Skillshare.
Super cool. We had launched our what we call internal academy to the outside and sold a decent amount, but it was kind of like a flash in the pan kind of thing. It wasn't nothing ongoing. And so it feels really good to see the other side of like having an environment and support, like something like through Skillshare that just can keep things going. Is there an update cadence in regards to some of these course creators of how they're updating their course, or is a lot of the stuff evergreen? Like, do you have any thoughts or analytics on that?
Yeah, a lot of it is evergreen. And if you look at as of today, our top classes over the last 90 days, I would say there are probably 5 to 10 of them that go back as far as 2014, 15, 16.
Okay.
So there's definitely some things that tend to be more technique focused, tend to be evergreen. Whereas, if you're teaching Adobe Photoshop, it does get stale after a while, although even then a lot of the core functionality is relatively stable. So we see a mix of both. The top teachers, they do have a pretty consistent publishing cadence. Yeah. And the way Skillshare works, when you produce your first class, people come in, they watch your class, they can follow you as a teacher. So as you build that first following, now when you launch your second class, you already have a couple thousand people that are kind of on your roster and are going to be notified when you launch that second class. So we've got people who have built up, followings of 50, 60,000 students over the course of the last couple of years. And, it's sort of the 1 or 2 classes a quarter tends to be the cadence of the highest performing teachers. And then, depending on the topic, some teachers do really well with longer classes that are 2 to 3 hours, but we have a lot of teachers who do really well with the 45-minute format. So there depends a little bit on the topic and the style, but ultimately, as you start to build that community and build that following, your earnings start to snowball. And the way we pay out, it's a royalty model. So we pay out based on your share of the minutes watched in that month. So as you continue to produce and you get more eyeballs and you get more people watching those classes and actually sitting down and giving away their hard-earned time to take your class, that's when your earnings really start to rise.
So when you just mentioned like your narrative and the flow of your content to kind of keep people engaged, it seems even more important now understanding your pay model as well.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, I think we're somewhat unique by paying for minutes watched as opposed to enrollments or a la carte sales. Yeah, because now the teachers really are incentivized to produce content that gets people to sit down and watch, because it's really easy to get, to produce a really nice trailer and get somebody to click the a la carte purchase button. But if the content's not good, they're not going to sit there and watch it. So we want to make sure we're lining up, the ultimate value indicator from our students with how we pay out our teachers.
That totally makes sense. Is there anything that you're comfortable or willing to share in regards to the marketing behind Skillshare itself? Or do you have any other nuggets you might want to be able to share about marketing that the course creators themselves took upon themselves to go, initiate?
Yeah, I mean, from our side on the sort of the Skillshare marketing of us as a business, that's something we've really focused on over the last couple of years. I think we have been very aggressive on our influencer marketing, on our paid acquisition programs. Okay. And, I think we arguably have one of the best influencer marketing engines in the world right now. And that is something that we've developed over time, but as you can imagine, it takes a lot of incremental investment, and the world is littered with the carcasses of startups who spent way too much money way too fast and did it inefficiently, and it just doesn't work. You burn up too much. So we've been very deliberate and very consistent in how we approach this. So really understanding our complete funnel from visitor to free trial to conversion to retention and renewal over time. And we've gotten much better over the last year or two on just our overall testing and optimization and measurement. Yeah. Startups talk a lot about tech debt and kind of how that creates sort of crud within their back end and how that hampers the user experience. Yeah. They don't talk a lot about data debt. And when you don't have your system instrumented the right way or capturing the right data or packaging it the right way or accessible enough, you may not miss it much when you're small, but as you start to get big and 1% really actually matters and adds up to real dollars, you're going to wish you had it. So I think, my advice to anyone starting out is to keep that hygiene from the very beginning. Make sure you really understand your metrics, you're capturing them the right way, and then you've got the expertise internally to analyze them in the right way as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Matt, I'm so impressed. Like you're firing right out of the gate in regards to a lot of the nuggets that we can use. Is there anything else that you think that I haven't asked you about that should be vital for people to understand? Either thinking about like people listening are the course creators themselves. What would you leave off on?
There's just so there are so many alternatives out there, and ultimately Skillshare, we're not competing with other online platforms, online learning platforms. We're competing with Netflix or going to the gym or Spotify or podcasts or staring out the window. So ultimately what coming and staying is great content and great teachers. And so I think those, the people who have the right personality, they have the right expertise, they know how to package it in the right way, they can do really well. But it really does take a holistic approach, because there's a lot of competition for people's time and attention. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how good the product is. If the content's not good, they're not going to stick.
Right. Makes a ton of sense. Well, I'm already thinking about joining your guys' platform myself. So I'll shoot you a note after this episode is done.
All right. Yeah, we'll get you going.
All right, man. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Talk soon. Bye.